Hello and welcome to the Operator Framework Working Group OLM Development Meeting. It is April 25th, 2023, approximately 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, which I think is, we had 7 hours onto that, and it's probably 1800 hours Central Time. I could be wrong, but that's roughly the time. My name is Todd Short. I will be hosting today. This meeting will be recorded and will be posted to YouTube. Before we jump into the topics, we're going to go look at we're going to do a milestone check-in. So click on that. We are currently working toward milestone 3. And clicking on that, we can see we have 3 things left to do, 2 of which will be demoed today. So we will close out 2 of these tasks today and be even closer to being done. I believe that those tasks will be 163 and 162, which are the spec.version and spec.channel field in the operator API, and that we still have to do catalog D-defined catalog to install an operator. Are there any questions or comments regarding OLM v1 milestone 3?
I have a comment. So I put up a PR for the catalog to define catalog. So that's in review. I wasn't planning on doing this, but I can do a demo of it at the end of the agenda list that we have already, if folks feel like that'll help in getting the reviews in.
Okay. If we have time, great. Otherwise, we can put it on the agenda for next week.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, awesome. Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, let's go on to the agenda. So the first topic is me, TM Short, to demo spec.version and spec.channel. So I did put a demo of this into the OLM dev channel upstream. Let me just make sure I have the right name for that channel. OLM dev on the Kubernetes Slack. There was some images, but some ASCII, however you pronounce it, images, but I will show you a live demo. So let me switch to that right now. So I have to share something else now. Make sure I share the right thing. Okay, can everyone see my terminal session, and is it an appropriate size?
You're good.
We're good. Okay, great. So what I've just done is I have literally just run make end-to-end test for on my host, which is a Linux box. And what that does, at the very least, what it does is it sets up a kind cluster from which I can then start to run the demo. So it has installed certificate manager, ruckpack, etc. So we can just do a kubectl get namespaces. So we can see that we have cert manager there. We have the ruckpack system. We have and OLM namespaces plus everything else. So the script itself, I posted as part of the tarball, the demo scripts. There were 2 of them, one for version and one for the channel. I posted them as part of the tarball so people can take a look at what the script is. I'll just show the first script. M3 demo 1.sh. Or did I just call it demo.sh? I think I just called it demo1.sh. There we go. So this is to do the Prometheus one, which tests out the version. And when I run this, all this stuff will happen. Here we go. Okay. So this does a set minus X to display everything that happens. And I found a neat thing that if you do colon is a no op, so it doesn't actually do like an extra echo or anything. It just shows the line. So I can use that as a printed comment. So it does the, it just cleans up, does the deletes, it applies a Prometheus operator, which is shown in the script. It isn't shown here because it's done via standard in. We can see that the Prometheus operator is created, and sorry, it's automatically scrolled up there. We then go off and get the bundle deployment reference, the image reference, to see what it was, and it is this guy right here. So this, as far as I can recall, is the operator that is expected. The bundle reference as expected for version 0.32. We then, sorry for the jump. We then patch it to 0.7.0.37. We see that's patched. We go off and get the bundle deployment. We see the bundle deployment has changed. Instead of starting with 1.4F, it starts with 3E28. And then we change it to 4.7, which I believe does not exist. So, or maybe it does. I guess it does. So it goes off and gets it again. So we update a second time and we get to 5B0. Then we try to update to the non-existing 107. We try that. We check the conditions and note that the package is not found, resolution has failed. And we then go check the bundle image to make sure we are still at 0.47, which it is. It matches the same hash. We then, so we go do that. We've done that. We double check. We then remove this version from the Prometheus operator to make sure it happens, and we go off and check the ref, and it still stays at 0.47, which is the same bundle. And we check that then we go off and delete the operator and make sure that the bundle deployment is gone, in which case it is. Any questions there? This work was done by Per, who is not here today. So any questions?
I understand what happens there was that operator executed during those upgrades. Operators were started with different versions and executed whatever upgrade logic they were supposed to do to go from 37 to 47 to 107, correct? Oh, well,
yes.
107 is not the case because it doesn't exist.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, exactly.
One little note there. The operator in this case doesn't, well, and even if we were to change stuff, the operator doesn't know what version it's upgrading from. So OLM, or the operator controller, all that's actually happening right now is we go and ask the resolver, hey, look at the new state of the spec of the operator and figure out what I should do. And the resolver comes back and says, oh, here's the right thing. And it gives us the new bundle image. And then the operator controller just goes and tells the bundle deployment, hey, use this new bundle image. And then the bundle deployment literally just replaces what was there before with what we've asked it to replace. So the way that things work right now, we can go forwards, we can go backwards. Like there's no concept right now of upgrade edges yet. So like if we put in something that asked it to go from 0.47 back to 0.37, it would happily do that, no questions asked. So just a little extra context there to make sure.
Okay.
Is that something that we're looking at putting in?
Yeah, that's all coming. It's all just incremental.
Okay, and just my naive understanding is that operator CR is like a combination of OLM v0 subscription and install plan, right? So essentially what we are saying is that, hey, I want to have this operator named XYZ at this version, and we are done, right?
So I think what we're
trying.
I
understand it's V1 API. Yeah, I understand, but kind of I'm trying to relate it to v0 APIs.
Operator CR is probably I don't think it's one-to-one. Operator CR is more of a, it's all, we're trying to make it declarative, right? If you have to pick one API that operator CR is closest to, yeah, it's subscription.
Okay.
But it's more declarative, and you don't necessarily, it's not like always now a subscription. You can pin things and stuff like that, or at least that's
Yeah,
going to be.
I got it. I understand that there's no subscription concept, Tony, as started. I just wanted to relate somehow. Okay, but I got it.
And the other thing is that I think the way that we're going to go forward here is there's going to be a bunch of ways to specify constraints in the operator. So as you saw here, like the constraint that we're interested in is the version of the operator. Todd's going to do another demo where the constraint is the channel. And we're going to add more different types of constraints that you can specify potentially. And that's not necessarily tied to the, like, when does an upgrade happen, right? Like the way that this works now is the upgrade happens immediately as soon as we can do a resolution that passes. But that might not be the case going forward. Like it might just be that, like, yes, this part of the API talks about setting constraints on what you want things to look like. And then there's going to be another piece of the API potentially that says, and here's when to realize those constraints. So just want to kind of lay out where we think we might be going. But a lot of this is still under discussion, and we'll talk about that in discussions and issues in GitHub.
So are we looking at putting anything in that allows the bundle to define kind of additional things to do when moving between versions, or is it always going to be a drop and replace?
There's been a few discussions started on that. We haven't decided where or how, but like one of the things that Chris brought up was requiring pre-install or pre-upgrade acknowledgements to handle license changes on operators, for example. So that would be something that like is more of a cluster admin thing that they need to do.
Yeah.
Are you also asking about like a migration that an operator needs to do that's maybe not part of the operator's logic itself?
Well, where my head is really is we've got this version number in here, and we're going in and we're changing the version number, and what the process then does is it just goes and drops the old one and creates a new one. Now, to me, that implies that what we should be doing instead is saying that the version field is immutable and you can't change it. And in order to change the version of an operator, you should delete the operator CR and create a new one, because then you're explicitly saying, I understand that what's happening here is this is being deleted and put back. Unless there's some sort of special process that's helping it, that's doing that in a more controlled way, I feel like an immutable field is less susceptible to hitting edge case failures. Take for an example, a different example, if you go and edit a pod template in a deployment, then what Kubernetes will do is it will say, okay, well, this is a deployment. I know how to do rollouts. This deployment is set to this kind of rollout. So I need to go and start a pod, wait for it to be ready, delete the old pod, right? And take that whole process and do all that work. And that's how that field is, that's how making those fields mutable is acceptable, because there is a defined process for how you get from one to the other in a safe way. If we're not defining that safe path, then I kind of feel like we should just make it immutable and say, well, you got to delete it and create a new one.
I don't think we're saying that there's not going to be a defined path.
Yeah.
Like in the way this happens today in Ruckpack is Ruckpack sees that you're asking for something new. It has the old version of the operator still running. It actually goes and tries to run a Helm upgrade. And if the Helm upgrade fails, it says, okay, that didn't work the way I expected to, roll it back. So there's a process that works, and one of the reasons that you wouldn't want to do a delete recreate is because the bundles have CRDs in them. So if you delete a bundle deployment, that means you're deleting some CRDs, which means you're deleting CRs. So that's no good. So we need to do a rolling sort of update in place sort of thing if possible. That's not to say that there's not cases where we might want to have an extra knob that lets you do a full recreate, right? Like that's a thing that Helm lets you do. So a lot of the stuff is still on the table. And I think what you're seeing here is just very early. So it's hard to draw conclusions too much about where things will go.
Okay, cool. That's good background. I mean, I say it should be immutable. That's more me kind of my head just saying, well, why isn't it? And getting that context. So thank you for the context. It's very helpful.
Or maybe just trying to get a little bit more details. So there is a spec version. Is there also a status version? So if I update it, following the demo pattern here, right? I updated spec version. Something had happened. Is there? How do I know that actually something happened? Besides checking that bundle ID has changed, and whether I know how do I know that the bundle ID actually matches the specific version that I requested?
Yep, that's probably an improvement we could make on this. We should. Do you mind actually submitting an issue in operator controller to capture that?
Yeah.
Or someone.
Can you send? I can. Can you send me a link to the proper repo for me to open the ticket?
I've got it, Piotr. I'll send it over.
All right, fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to comment on this, something we've been trying to do is like really scope the work such that we're able to get these milestones down quickly. And when we're scoping that work, we purposely omit stuff like, surfacing the version and the status, just to kind of get something in front of people so we can have conversations like this and, drive what we're doing next based on community feedback. So this is like, the whole process working in real time. So I'm really glad that, have your participation, and thank you for creating that issue.
Well, it was about to show an operator, but the demo script deletes it. So sorry.
Joe, you may remember too, when we were discussing the whole idea of how the version field should work, there was discussion about not only here's the currently running version in status, but also possibly a resolved version. So if the version is not a constraint to an exact version, then it would be like, you requested v1.anything. Here's what we resolved it to. We resolved it to v1.5. And by the way, you're still running v1.2 because we haven't actually done the upgrade yet. So a couple of different status fields, I think, are in order.
Yep, totally agree.
Okay, are we ready for the channel demo? Okay, it's 11:23 right now, so let's move on. Okay, so this next demo 2, if I show you this, it's a much smaller script, but it creates the, I don't know, Strimzy Kafka operator, and tries to load it from the 032 channel, and then tries to update it to 033, and etc. And we'll see how it works. So this is a slightly smaller, but it's basically the same idea. I had to put sleeps in this because it was taking a little bit of time to for the resolution to occur. It was running faster than the resolution. So basically we delete the existing operators just to clean up, and then we create the operator via standard in, and you can see that the Kafka operator has been created. We go look at what the bundle is, and the bundle is this hash is 04DA. So then we patch it to try to use the 033 channel. We update that, and then we wait a split second and go off and get the bundle deployment, and we see that the bundle has now been updated to 4D93. We remove it. We remove the channel, so that means basically we can use any channel. And we go off, update that, wait a second, and it goes off, and it went back to a different channel and grabbed the image 42A3 So we can see that based upon the it was switched back to a default channel. We then
Hey, Todd.
switched. Yes.
Real quick, the way that works is if you don't specify a channel, that just means there's no constraint on the channel. And the way that we prefer resolving when there are no constraints is Simber ordering and
Okay.
reverse, right? So that version selection there is just the highest version in the entire package.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it used the default or was the highest. Okay, great, thank you. We then set it to a non-existent channel. I think we just name it foobar, and it goes off, and we can see that the resolution has failed because there is no foobar channel, and that it is still installed as that last version 4.2A3, and then we go off and delete it, and that's basically the demo. Any questions here? It's very similar to the version demo. Now it's basically all just a constraint.
I think there are hands up.
Oh, okay, sorry. Thank you. I don't know who did it first, but Frederick is unmuted and he's at the top of my list. So Frederick.
Yeah, that's a quick question on what Joe mentioned. If we look at the package manager in operating system in Linux, usually you have a preferred channel. If I take the analogy, so I'm wondering whether it wouldn't make sense to have a kind of a channel ordering rather than picking up the latest SAM version independent of the channel. What do you think?
I think we've talked about that. Another way you could do this potentially is to extend the spec.channel API to be a list of channels that are maybe listed in priority order, so that like a cluster admin actually gets to say their preference rather than the catalog getting to decide. But yeah.
And where I'm coming from is, when you start mixing packages, so in this case, operator between channels, but when you have cross-channel dependencies, as you're more likely to have things that are not working as expected.
Yeah, the one thing that we absolutely want to fix in V1 is that when you are trying to resolve dependencies, you can resolve them from anywhere. So in V0, there's problems that come up because you can only resolve dependencies from the default channel, if I remember correctly. And, that sort of, if you don't realize that as an operator author, it's really easy to get into a situation where you depend on something that is available, but because it's not in the default channel, you can't actually depend on it. Now, I might have gotten some details wrong there, so if I did, then tell me.
Well, what I'm saying is, you can have kind of a validation for one specific channel, but it's unlike, if you look at the operating system like RHEL, they will validate that different packages in the RHEL repository are working together. If you look at EPEL, then they won't have packages that are provided in a RHEL channel, in RHEL repository, available in EPEL as well. So you don't get this cross thing, but you can also add additional repository, and they may depend on packages from the RHEL repository, but you won't get the other way around, where you have a RHEL packages depending on external on packages from external repositories, because you have a validation for RHEL globally, but you don't have that for packages coming from other repositories. And That's where I'm unsure here is so there is no I don't see how you would have one single authority saying these versions are compatible if they come from different channels.
I think I agree with you. We have OCP and the way that catalogs get built today, I think have at least in the Red Hat context. I don't know how other users are using this, but at least in Red Hat context, the catalogs have all sorts of different maturity levels of content in the default catalogs. So as much as I want us to move in the direction that I think what you're talking about, Frederick, I'm not sure how feasible that is, but I do think it should be an open discussion. Like, I think that should be something that's on the table to talk about. So I think I agree with you.
So we have two other people with hands up, and I'd like to be able to get to them plus the other items. So Vu, if you have something you'd want to say.
Yes, I just have a few scenarios I would like to ask to just clear a few things here. So if you pick a channel, I don't know, alpha, and I assuming the controller, the resolver here, will pick the latest version of the bundle in the channel, is that correct?
I believe if you don't specify the version, it will pick the latest version in that channel.
Okay, and then what happened if I change the channel to be something else?
Change the what?
Changing the channel to beta, for example, when there's already a version from alpha already installed, then we'll pick the latest on beta and install.
That, yes.
And do they do any comparison between the already installed version and the latest on the beta?
Not yet.
Yeah, so this is a very simple demo. There's still a lot of work to do here, especially with respect to the intersection of the constraints and how they work together.
I see. And from what I heard so far, based on what you said earlier on the demo, that if you don't specify channel, it's just gonna pick the default channel. Is that correct?
Joe corrected me to say that it will pick the highest semver channel.
Oh.
Yeah, so think about it like this. If you specify an operator CR with only package, which is the only required field, then what you're declaring is, I just need this package installed. I don't care about what gets picked, essentially. And so the way that OLM is, operator controller is implemented today is we have hard-coded in there a preference order, which is semver descending. So we'll always pick the highest version. And like, just think about every version in the entire package gets ordered in a list. As you start adding channel and or version, stuff gets removed from that list that doesn't match the channel or version. That list is still there, and that's still what we're going to pick from, right? So if you say like, oh, I want channel strim Z 0.33, anything that's not in that channel is now gone from that list. Then we resolve, then we pick the first thing in the list. That's essentially what we're demoing here.
Yes, I understand the concept picking on the resolver standpoint. My scenario is only on the upgrade side of things, in the sense that, for example, you're installing a version on alpha because you specify alpha general time, and now you just run it randomly, remove the alpha specification on the channel, and now it becomes free for all, essentially. Then I would basically go ahead.
I would assume in that case, though it's probably not there yet, but if there is no edge between the version you have installed and the new version that we resolve to, then the system's going to say, sorry, can't go to this version.
We won't even resolve. It won't.
Yeah, that's my point, in the sense that if you randomly now open the scope up, remove the general constraint there, then you should consider that a failure or not do anything, because you scope into a specific channel and now you should basically not doing it anymore. Then it become a free for all, which is prompt to the resolver to pick something randomly, pretty much, and you get upgraded to that version.
I don't think it'll be random. What'll happen in that case assuming we have upgrade edges supported, which we don't yet, is there'll just be more constraints that filter that list down that say, like, actually, I see that you're currently using version 0.33. So I'm going to go look at my channel list, and I'm going to take out any version that isn't either 33 itself, because I'm allowed to stay on my current version, or I'll only select from versions that say they can upgrade from 33. Doesn't matter what channel they're in anymore, because you told me you didn't care about channel. But now I can upgrade anywhere that says it can upgrade from my current version.
Correct.
I
But
think
then
in Vu's
would
scenario, he
you,
was adding a channel, so it would be now your list would be smaller because you added the
Right.
beta channel constraint.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
is
so-
there anything left on the beta channel that can upgrade from where you currently are?
Exactly.
assuming there's an edge to a different channel, would you actually writing that channel back to the spec of the operator CR here?
No, we're not going to write to the spec.
Okay, so the user would know that version, but doesn't know where that channel coming, which channel that coming from.
Right, because they said they didn't care about channels.
Okay.
Although
So-
I will say we may update the status to indicate that, but just in summary, there is a lot of plumbing that hasn't been done yet.
I'm not even sure about that, to be honest, because a bundle can exist in multiple channels, and it's not really relevant which channel, like it. You don't even really necessarily know if you're talking about resolution, like quote unquote, which channel it was. Like maybe you could list all the channels that it's in, but I don't know. Like I think that's a little bit less relevant than saying like, here's like in the spec you've got, here's all the constraints that you asked for. In the status, you say, okay, here's what I resolved, or resolve failure. Yep. And the what you resolved is probably some of the properties that are on the bundle that got picked. So you could list the image and you could list the version and stuff like that.
Right, but suffice it to say, there is still a lot of plumbing that needs to be done, to be discussed and figured out. And so that's where we are right now.
Yes, absolutely. I just want to clarify a few things. Got all of that. Thank you. Just one thing, just one comment real quick, that I understand that depending on how the author construct this channel and on the bundle and on the update wrap potentially in the future on that, this gonna play out differently depending on that. But to me, some of the implicit behavior here is honestly a pitfall that you can falling into it if the people who using it doesn't understand how the result will work. And I feel like perhaps that's something you should gatekeeping again and make it more explicit, in my opinion. That's just my comment. I'm not saying that you guys need to do this, anything like that. But that's just my comment there, and that's all. Thank you for me.
Okay, great. Thank you, Vu. And we have Anik who has who wants something to say.
Yeah, I was just noticing the last part of the demo where you added the channel foobar. So the resolution failed, but then we saw that the installed operator did not change.
Right, because the existing operator was not replaced and removed with a new version. It was the one that was already there.
Right. So I think that fits the expectations that a lot of our clients who are more of the SRE nature, like who cares about cluster stability. Essentially, the topic is safe upgrade / rollback to make sure that the cluster is not put in a state where it requires immediate intervention. So that's great, right? But then just a small thing that I noticed is that you checked the status conditions of the operator CR, which says resolution failed. But then we had to go and check the bundle deployment to make sure that the operator is still installed. So I think that gets folks who will probably get paged when this resolution failed error shows up will get paged anyway and not know that, okay, you know what, resolution failed, but then the cluster is not unstable. So no need to go and do immediate, no need to go take immediate action. So what I'm trying to say is that there probably needs to be additional plumbing to make sure we also say that, okay, resolution failed, but don't worry, we are still in a good state.
Yes, I agree there. And I was going to say is we only currently have one condition type, which is ready, and we need to expand that.
Yep. and I think we'll probably kind of like what was mentioned earlier, there's going to be some other fields that say, here's what was resolved versus here's what's installed. And if those two things are different, then you can be I think you're somewhat expecting that like that either something is progressing or I guess if you can't resolve, then the resolved status won't have anything. But yes, regardless, Anik, I think this is just a question of like, we just need to fill out the status a little bit more as we solidify some of this stuff. So I think you're spot on.
Okay. Is there anything else? We are at, it's 11:41 and we have a number of other topics to get to. So, and Kita, you have something.
Just a quick question. Are we planning to make channels discoverable within the catalog as a first class API or something?
Are we planning to make the channels discoverable is what I heard. Joe? Anybody?
That should be happening as part of the catalog D integration, I think. So yes.
Okay.
Essentially, the answer is there's going to be some APIs that look a lot like kind of the package manifest APIs, probably, but are going to be better and a little bit more informational, and it's essentially going to be the exact same thing. The plan right now is that whatever OLM is able to see when it does resolution, other clients on the cluster can also see if they have permission. So that's sort of the idea that we're working with right now.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Yeah, I've been preparing for a demo in the background, and this is exactly what I've been doing, stitching together that and looking at that stuff. So if we do get to that stage where we are demoing the catalog integration, I can talk more about that.
So yeah, so Anik, I believe you are the next one in line. You're the next topic. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to change my sharing. Go back to the agenda real quick. I believe it's this one. So the next topics are, Anik, you have catalog D issue labels. Did you need to share anything?
It was just a quick little thing. So we are actively planning our work through issues in catalog D, and then getting into the issue triage world. We were doing we were adding a few basic labels. I think the OLM V1 milestone 3 labels are added to some of them. Good first issue doc. I think there are some basic set of labels, but I don't know if there was standardization around the labels that we'd like to see. I wasn't even sure if it doesn't matter, maybe like we can all individually decide what labels works for us best, but then just want to get this ball rolling to make sure that we at least talk about, do we need a set of labels that we like to see across all of our repos that makes our issues recognizable and triaged in a more better way?
My 2 cents, at least, would be to leave it up to the repo maintainers. It seems like we're sort of coalescing on tracking the high-level OLM V1 work under operator controller milestones and issues there. So for any other repos that are dependent upon by operator controller, we're going to do sort of like what we saw here, where like, okay, there's a story that says we need to go and implement some catalog D stuff, but from operator controller's perspective, that's just sort of, bumping a dependency, and all of the underlying work potentially that's happening in catalog D is tracked however catalog D wants to track it. And what we should do ideally is from the operator controller repo, like if there is work that's related to a demo that talks about some catalog D stuff, maybe we want to link some of those issues into the operator controller issue just for visibility. But at least my 2 cents is, if different repos want to have different labeling strategies because it helps them, that should be fine. I mean, obviously, the more consistency we have, the easier it'll be for contributors to jump back and forth. So I think we shouldn't just go wild just because, but if there's a good reason to have a certain label strategy, then sure, let's be flexible.
Okay, yeah,
Okay,
that makes
sorry, I was saying Alex has his hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to echo most of what Joe said. I was also just going to add, if you keep the labeling system simple so that it's less of a barrier for people to get in, that's great. And if somebody misses your labeling system, just make sure to help get them into the correct state. So I think I agree. It should be up to the individual project, but they want to label their issues and how they do that. And consistency where we can have consistency would be great. So defaulting to like, really common issues with it would be great. So like good first issue, like you had mentioned on it, like everybody knows what that means. It doesn't take any onboarding to understand how to use that label. So that's like a great one to use.
okay, sounds good to me. When we bootstrap the repo under operator framework, I think it added a set of like 37 or 40 labels. So we're about to go clean that up, and I guess we'll just figure out how to label that for our own things in catalog D. Cool. Yeah, that's all I had.
Okay, great, thank you. I do not know who Jamsta is, but they have the next agenda topic.
That would be
Multi-art
me.
support. Okay.
That would be me. So I know we've only talked about OLM v1 so far this call, but this is really an OLM v0 thing where at the moment catalog sources have a couple of different ways to select nodes, but they don't have a way to select, to tell Kubernetes, I want to run this catalog on a subset of architectures so that Kubernetes knows you can either run the catalog on x86 or Power, but nothing else, right? This has kind of come up recently because although you can do multi-arch clusters in Kubernetes for ages, OpenShift 4.14, I believe, is where multi-arch is going to GA from an OpenShift perspective. So I feel like that function is missing. So I've made a PR for the API to add it in, and I've put some code there for the lifecycle manager to use that to when it's creating the catalog pod. At the moment, I'm not sure. There seems to be some resistance to putting it in, and I'm not sure where that's coming from, or if there are better alternatives for managing that use case. So I just wanted to bring it up here.
So I haven't seen it, but I'll certainly take a look at the PR. I don't know if anybody has any other comments. There does seem to be some conversation on the PR.
I think I'm on the same boat. It feels like immediately my guess is that there's something being added to the gRPC pod config, which we've already added. Like I can see words like node affinity and stuff like that. It is a fact that that is a very context laden field in there. So if there is resistance, we might have to like go and reassess why we are talking about that and make sure that we are taking into consideration all of the context. But it's the first time I'm seeing this PR too, so I can take a note of it to go and check it out and chime in and see what the context is and why what the other folks are trying to say, and see if we can get this moving.
Cool. I'm happy if there's good alternatives to use those. It's more at the moment. It just seems to be in a no man's land. So I just wanted to bring it up.
So we got some attention on that. The next topic, if there's nothing left for discussion there, is from Everett Raven, is it Bryce?
Yes, that's me. So my topic is just, as I've noticed this meeting has started going more high level OLM overview stuff. And I know it used to be more of like a issue triage type meeting. Since we've gone to more like an overview, higher level overview meeting, I was curious what people's thoughts are on, maybe creating some smaller meetings just for like quick issue triage in like the individual components for OLM v1. Especially as I'm helping with a lot of that catalog D integration stuff, I think having like maybe a weekly meeting on syncing and making sure we have proper issues created and where we want them organized and all that kind of stuff for how we iterate on catalog D would be nice. And I'm sure that folks in other projects it'd be beneficial for. So it's just curious thoughts.
Do we think there's enough time in this meeting to sort of keep things consolidated, at least for now?
Well, I mean, things that we spend whenever we have, I mean, I think it depends. If we want to make it more towards, I think it depends how we want to structure this. Like if we want to have issue triage before topics, because we do tend to spend a lot of time talking over the topics. And so like if we have it towards the end and we only have like 10 minutes for issue triage across 3 or 4 projects, I feel like that's probably not enough time. But what I had in my head was maybe like a weekly or a couple times a week, like 15-minute meeting just for triage for individual components. Just rapidly going through and triaging. But
I'm going to just say that, I personally am anti-meeting. I prefer to have fewer meetings, fewer and more productive meetings. So I would actually prefer not to have an additional meeting if possible, but I'm not going to say I won't, not attend if it's there.
So I think what we've, I think you should leave it to each project to decide what their issue triage process is going to be. I certainly don't think we need to do every issue triage in this meeting, right? Because we already have like 4 or 5 projects. You can see this expanding. And I just don't think we'll be able to address all incoming issues in a reasonable amount of time if we're trying to do all the issue triage here, in addition to showcasing demos, in addition to talking about like, potential future stuff we want to do with the project and, milestone idea generation kind of stuff here. So I think I'd like to see each team do it. And we have a fairly easy way for people to add stuff to the operator framework Google Calendar, which, automatically will add, we'll make that issue triage meeting more visible to anybody who's following that calendar. So I think that might be the way to go. So if you are a maintainer on one of these projects and you want to, devote some time in your week to, issue triaging, you can create, one of those meetings. I just think, like deputy, it probably doesn't make for us to have an issue triage on that one simply because there's, it's a bit more stable as far as projects go right now. And I don't see a benefit there, but I think catalog D makes a ton of sense to have that type of individual issue triage meeting.
I mean, this meeting has evolved, so I think it may be necessary to, as you say, Alex, to have additional meetings for specific repos. And as things get more mature, we may be able to scale those meetings back. Is that basically what you're kind of saying?
Yeah, I'm just saying if people, if a project thinks that they would benefit, like if cataloged, is it catalog D or cataloged?
Keep saying one of the either ones and often enough, and I think we'll just stick to that. So it's free for all.
Okay, I'm just gonna say catalog D 100 times, and that'll be the new front runner. But okay, so catalog D, I think like it makes sense for them to do it. I think like operator controller might have some like a need for an issue triage pretty soon. So I just think the ability for a project to decide, hey, we'd like to do
we'd like to schedule some time to meet and make sure that we're staying on top of our issues. Seems totally reasonable. And I would just like to see them have that ability to do it and get it out of this meeting, just because I think this meeting is going to blow up if we try to do that for all the projects.
What if we started with Slack-based async, but at a certain time sort of thing, where it's like, okay, let's everyone get together in Slack at some certain time and everyone pull up GitHub. I don't know, like maybe that's a little bit less interruptive because you can maybe still multitask. I don't know, just throwing another option out there as a thing to consider.
Yeah, because that's something you and I have been trying to push for, right? More asynchronous kind of stuff, like issue generation and issue triaging happens organically by just constantly, allowing people to do stuff asynchronously. And that's what I envisioned we do for operator controller, but I don't want to force catalog D into adhering to that structure if they don't want to do that.
Yeah, I guess the one thing that I always worry about a little bit with issue triage meetings is that that's an excuse to just not triage any other time. And then things start to build up and then you inevitably don't actually triage everything that needs to get triaged. And eventually then you have like a huge backlog of stuff that you've never seen. So we should be cognizant of like of not falling into that trap, I think.
Yeah.
At least for me personally, like if I know GitHub is sometimes like a total fire hose, but maybe for select repos, we just try to keep a better eye on incoming issues. And, as they come in, if someone happens to see it, just go and put a comment on there, do whatever it is. If you need help triaging it, then Slack is a good place to talk about it. I don't know. That seems like a little more organic and better from a response standpoint, because then you might get a response sooner than if you had to wait for an issue triage meeting.
Yeah, I'm all for a more async process if we can swing it. I guess I'm just coming from more of the operator SDK side of things where we have that weekly triage meeting. And that's more so where we have discussions about, okay, these issues kind of align with this milestone. So let's make sure that we put it in that milestone and make sure that it's getting done then. I agree that we should always be triaging the issues. But so maybe for like an async process, we can have like a proposed label or something for the milestone. And then we can say, hey, there's a bunch of these proposed issues. Can people make sure we go through and all the maintainers can say, yeah, I think that belongs in that milestone or whatever.
So I see where you're coming from, Bryce. I think what I'm getting at, or what I'm getting from all of this conversation is, and I think I agree with that, is we have a set of issues right now that are being created, that are already created. At this point, it's not unmaintainable for us to kind of keep doing it and keep it async and keep it managed, keep it organized. After a while, if you see that we've grown enough where we explicitly need to have more organization around it, then we can think about having explicit issue triage meetings where it's more, folks coming in and also chiming in and stuff like that. Right now, I think it's manageable for us to keep doing it async, if that makes sense.
Joe, you have your hand up?
Oh, that was from earlier, sorry.
Okay. Okay, we are almost at time, and we have one more topic. I don't know if we can cover that or if people can stay a little bit later. Or we can try to wrap up the meeting. But Anik, I'm going to give you the floor quickly since you have a minute.
Okay. I guess I can very quickly, so that you cannot start sharing screen while there are other participants is sharing. Okay, so it doesn't look like.
I stopped.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'll just quickly talk about, like, without taking over people's time. Just this PR, which is catalog D integration. I'd have liked to do the demo, but I think we're already in time. So essentially, just a TLDR of this is that in the main branch, we have the V0, like OLM is being installed, V0 OLM is being installed, and then you've got the catalog operators that helps you install the catalog sources. And then you can install one of the operators from those catalogs. But then this PR replaces that integration with the catalog D integration. So there are two commits, one that just reverts the V0 integration, and the other one that just does the barebone integration. I was doing this demo preparation in the background, and it looks like all of the things that we talked about today, which is the channels and the versions, they all check out. Like I can install an operator with using catalog D catalogs. So I guess I'll leave that all for the next time, but I just want to bring attention to this PR so that everybody can chime in. I'll say that this is not the best of the implementations. Like some of the things that we'll see in there is, like I said myself, it's not the greatest, but then I didn't spend a lot of time optimizing this because we have a lot of work planned in catalog D to sort of change the way the APIs look and stuff like that. So as those change, this code will look a little bit more cleaner. So yeah, I guess I'll keep it to that in the 1 minute that I have.
Yes, apologies. It just the conversation took a long time. So we are now at time. Thank you, Anik. And so the last wrap up here is from old action items. They've all been completed as far as I can tell, so no need to really talk about that. And do we have a volunteer for the next meeting? I think I may have had a volunteer.
Are we? Should we? So most of our teams will be in that face-to-face one.
Sorry?
We might have a very small meeting because of the face-to-face our company's
Right.
doing.
Yes. So one option is we either delay it or we just have a very short meeting.
I think we should cancel next week's, in my opinion. I think we probably have some other sessions in the Red Hat face-to-face that are going to conflict, and we just won't have very much attendance at all. So it's probably not worthwhile.
Okay, so I have updated the next agenda to be May 9th, postponed from May 2nd. So we have a bunch of time, and I think Ankita, you were potentially going to volunteer to run that meeting?
Yes.
Okay, great.
It's all the same.
Okay, great. So that is it. We can stop the recording, and this recording will be posted once it's available. Thank you for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is someone updating the calendar for that May 2nd cancellation?
It's in the agenda right now. Whoever, we can update the calendar. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.